In this lecture, I'm going to discuss some of the elements of poetry. Some of these terms may be familiar to you, but a little review can be very beneficial. Form refers to the organization of the parts of a poem. You can look at a poem very broadly and decide whether it is a sonnet, lyrical poem, or free verse. However, many poems are organized into sections called stanzas. You can think of a stanza as a poetry paragraph. When you examine a poem, you will also look for rhyme. When words at the ends of lines rhyme, that is called end rhyme. If these words form a pattern, that is called a rhyme scheme. For example, one common rhyme scheme for a sonnet is A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, G. This is the rhyme scheme Shakespeare used in all of his sonnets. When I gave the example of rhyme scheme, I used letters of the alphabet. The matching letters signify matching sounds. Sometimes you may encounter words that almost but do not quite rhyme. This is called slant rhyme. An example of slant rhyme would be heart and dark. They are not exact rhyme because one ends in T and the other ends in K. Another form of rhyme is internal rhyme, in which words rhyme within lines. As you read a poem, you will examine the poem to determine if it has meter. When I say a poem has meter, I mean it has a regular rhythmic pattern. The meter creates the rhythm of the poem by using stressed and unstressed syllables. Think of the word sheriff. Which syllable is stressed, the first or the second? We stress the first syllable of the word sheriff. Poets use these stressed syllables to create a beat or rhythm in their poems. Patterns of stressed and unstressed syllables are broken up into units called feet. Another important part of poetry is the poet's use of sound devices. Many poets use repetition, which is the intentional reuse of sounds, phrases, or words for emphasis. Many lyric poems have a refrain. A refrain is a line or group of lines repeated throughout the poem. Many of the songs we hear on the radio have refrains. Poets also use alliteration and assonance. Alliteration is the repetition of beginning consonant sounds, such as the P in Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. On the other hand, assonance is the repetition of beginning vowel sounds, such as Andy and Allison eat a lot of apples. The A sound is repeated. When you read a poem, do not forget to look for figurative language. Figures of speech include metaphor, simile, hyperbole, personification, and understatement. Metaphors and similes are both comparisons of unlike things. However, a simile is characterized by the usage of the words like or as. Hyperbole is the use of extreme exaggeration, such as, "She cried a river of tears," or "I'm so hungry I could eat a horse." Understatement is deliberately making something seem less important than it is. In The Catcher in the Rye, Salinger writes, "I have to have this operation. It isn't very serious. I have this tiny little tumor on the brain." Personification is the giving of inanimate objects human qualities. If I wrote, "The sun smiled down on me," I would be using personification. Here are some tips for reading poetry. 1. Read the poem out loud so you can hear how the language is used. This will help you pick up on meter and the poet's use of sound devices. 2. Visualize. As you read the poem, try to create mental images, concentrating your senses to see, hear, touch, smell, and taste the poem. 3. Annotate. Write down the meanings of unfamiliar words. Write notes in the margins. Jot down questions you may have. Annotation is important in truly understanding a poem. This has been a very brief and limited discussion of some of the elements of poetry. Remember, Poetry is not all flowers and butterflies. Some widely known poetry was written during World War I. Poetry comes in all forms and flavors and is more part of our everyday lives than many of us realize. If you listen to popular music or have ever received a greeting card, then I bet poetry is a part of your life.